The 5 human cadets stood in line, back straight and eyes forward. They were the first humans ever to set foot on the massive Interstellar Military Academy space station. Jack Daniels, a former Marine with short brown hair and determined eyes, kept his face blank despite the stares from passing alien officers. "They look at us like we're zoo animals," whispered Olivia Martinez from the corner of her mouth. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. "Stay focused," Jack replied quietly. "We're representing all of Earth here." The hallway they waited in was enormous, with ceilings 3 times taller than needed for humans. The walls gleamed with a metal that didn't exist on Earth, and the air smelled faintly sweet. Everything about the place reminded them they were outsiders. Commander Velnox approached, his 4 arms moving in perfect sync as he checked a floating screen. He stood nearly 7 feet tall with blue-gray skin and eyes that blinked sideways. The insignia on his uniform marked him as one of the Academy's senior officers. "Humans," he said, his translator making his voice sound flat and mechanical. "Follow me to processing." They walked for 15 minutes through winding corridors where cadets of a dozen different species trained. Some had scales, others had extra limbs, and a few seemed to float rather than walk. All of them stopped to stare at the humans. "This is going to be harder than we thought," Ryan Phillips muttered. He was the youngest of the group, barely 22, with an easy smile that was now nowhere to be seen. They entered a large room where 3 alien officers waited. The one in the center, clearly in charge, had skin that shimmered with a metallic shine and stood on 4 thick legs. This was Grand Marshal Drex, head of the Academy. "I am Drex," he said without greeting. "You are the Earth specimens selected for the exchange program." Jack stepped forward. "We're the human representatives, sir, ready to begin training." Drex made a sound that the translator didn't catch. "The Galactic Coalition has protocols for integrating new species. You will be placed in the basic tier for evaluation." Olivia frowned. "Sir, we were told we'd be joining standard first-year training. We've all completed military training on Earth." "Earth military training," said the officer to Drex's right, a thin alien with skin like tree bark. "It is not comparable. Your species has only achieved spaceflight in the last century. Most cadets come from civilizations with at least 1,000 years of interstellar experience." Lisa Johnson, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "With respect, we were invited here because Earth showed potential. We'd like the chance to prove ourselves." The officers exchanged glances. Finally, Drex nodded. "Very well. You will join Tier 3 training. But be warned. No accommodations will be made for your species' limitations." "We don't need any," Jack said firmly. They were dismissed and shown to their quarters, a small section redesigned for human biology. The rooms were plain but comfortable. That night, they gathered in the common area. With no aliens around, they could speak freely. "They've already decided we'll fail," said Frank Cooper, the 5th cadet, a former Air Force pilot. "Then we'll just have to surprise them," Olivia replied. Jack looked at each of them. The alarm blared at 0500, giving the human cadets 1 hour to prepare for their first day of training. Jack was already awake, doing push-ups on the floor of his small room. The others soon gathered in the common area, each looking both nervous and determined. "Remember," Jack said as they walked to the training area, "they expect us to fail. Let's prove them wrong." The training facility was enormous, with different sections for various types of exercises. Dozens of alien species moved through the stations, many with physical abilities far beyond human capacity. Some lifted weights that would crush a human, while others moved with blinding speed. Commander Velnox waited for them near the entrance, his forearms crossed in front of his chest. "Humans, today we assess your physical capabilities." He did not try to hide the doubt in his voice. The first test was simple endurance. The cadets had to run around a track while carrying weighted packs. The gravity was set slightly higher than Earth normal, making each step harder. "This will be interesting," said a tall, insect-like alien instructor to Velnox. "I predict they will last less than 1 rotation." Jack heard this and narrowed his eyes. He adjusted his pack and nodded to his fellow humans. They began to run. By the third rotation, the alien observers were talking among themselves. By the fifth, a small crowd had gathered to watch. The humans were sweating heavily, their faces red with effort, but none had stopped. Their form is inefficient, Velnox noted, yet they continue. Ryan was struggling the most. His legs shook with each step, and his breathing came in harsh gasps. On the seventh rotation, he stumbled and fell hard on the track. The medical officer, a floating jellyfish-like being, moved immediately to scan him. This one has reached physical failure. Muscles are tearing, heart rate dangerous for their species. Everyone expected Ryan to stay down. Instead, he pushed himself up, legs trembling. "Cadet, you are removed from the test," Velnox said. "No, sir," Ryan gasped. "I can continue." "Your body cannot," the medical officer stated. "This is not a matter of debate." "With respect," Ryan said between breaths. "I decide when I'm done." He started walking, then jogging again, rejoining the others. The aliens watched in what seemed like confusion. The test was supposed to last for 10 rotations. The humans completed 12 before Velnox finally ordered them to stop. "Illogical," he said, watching them collapse on the track, gasping for air. "You were physically failing. Why continue?" Olivia wiped sweat from her face. "Because we could, sir." "Your definition of could is different from ours," the medical officer noted, scanning all 5 humans. "You have each sustained minor muscle damage." "That will heal," Frank said, hands on his knees as he caught his breath. The next test involved reaction time. The cadets entered small chambers where holographic targets appeared randomly. They had to hit as many as possible in 1 minute. The aliens had faster reflexes naturally, but the humans showed something unexpected. They prioritized targets in ways the system hadn't predicted, hitting fewer overall, but focusing on the high-value ones. "Interesting strategy," said the testing officer. "Not highest efficiency, but effective prioritization." By the end of the day, the human cadets were exhausted but satisfied. None had quit any test, even when they struggled. In the combat simulation, Lisa had even managed to match scores with several alien cadets using techniques that confused the training system. As they headed back to their quarters, they overheard Velnox speaking to another officer. "They are weaker than most species here, slower than many, and their endurance is average at best," he said. "Yet they completed all tests," the other officer replied. "Yes," Velnox admitted. "I do not understand their persistence when failure is imminent. It is not logical." Jack smiled slightly as they walked past. Day 1 was complete, and already the aliens were puzzled. This was just the beginning. "Listen up. Earth is counting on us. The Alliance only invited us because they need more member planets for some reason. They don't think we're worth much." "So what's the plan?" Ryan asked. "Simple," Jack said with a small smile. "We show them exactly what humans can do. We train harder, study longer, and never, ever give up." Lisa nodded. "They have no idea what they're in for." "Tomorrow training starts at 600 station time," Jack said. "Get some sleep. From now on, we're not just cadets. We're Earth's first line of proof that humans belong among the stars." As they headed to their rooms, Olivia paused beside Jack. "Think we can actually do this?" Jack's eyes had a determined gleam. "They think they know what humans are capable of. They're about to learn how wrong they are." 3 days after the physical tests, the human cadets sat in a large classroom filled with alien students. Today was their first academic challenge, and the tension in the room was thick. Professor Zillith, a tall alien with 6 eyes and skin like polished silver, stood at the front of the room. "Today we begin tactical simulations," she said. "Each team will face a combat scenario designed for 5th-year cadets." Olivia glanced at Jack with concern. "5th year? We're supposed to be in 1st-year classes." Jack nodded slightly. "They're trying to make us fail," the professor continued. "Teams will be based on species. The human team will go last." For the next 2 hours they watched as other teams entered the simulation chamber. Most groups failed quickly against the advanced scenario. Even the Taurians, a warrior species known for their strength, only lasted 12 minutes. Finally, it was the humans' turn. They gathered at the entrance to the simulation room. "Listen up," Jack said quietly. "They expect us to fail, but we have something they don't." "What's that?" asked Frank. "Human creativity," Olivia answered with a small smile. "Let's show them how Earth fights." They entered the simulation chamber. The walls transformed into a battlefield, a city under attack by enemy forces. The scenario was simple but nearly impossible. Defend a civilian evacuation point against overwhelming enemy numbers. "Analysis shows enemy forces outnumber us 20-1, Lisa said, checking the tactical display. "Standard approach would be to form a defensive line here, but we'd be overrun in minutes." Olivia studied the map carefully. "We're not going to win by following standard tactics." She pointed to several spots on the map. "Ryan and Frank, create distractions here and here. Lisa, find high ground for sniper position. Jack and I will set traps along these routes." "This isn't in any of the standard defense protocols," Ryan noted. "Exactly," Olivia said. "They won't expect it." For the next 30 minutes, the human team executed Olivia's plan. Instead of forming a defensive line as the simulation expected, they created chaos. They set traps, used decoys, and constantly moved positions. The enemy AI, programmed to fight against conventional tactics, became confused. In the observation room, Professor Zelith watched with growing interest. Beside her, Commander Velnox could not hide his surprise. "What are they doing?" he asked. "Their approach is completely unorthodox, yet effective," Zelith replied. "The simulation was not programmed for these tactics. Back in the simulation, the humans had managed to hold the evacuation point for 45 minutes, longer than any other team. We're almost out of ammunition," Frank reported. Olivia nodded. Time for the final phase. She accessed the simulation controls and input a command that the computer initially rejected as impossible. It required overriding the safety protocols and combining two separate operations. "What are you doing?" the simulation voice asked. "Something you didn't think of," Olivia replied, completing a manual override. In the simulation, their defensive position suddenly changed. By combining evacuation protocols with defensive systems in a way not in the programming, Olivia had created a new solution. The simulation ended with a soft chime. Scenario complete. Evacuation successful. The human cadets looked at each other in disbelief. They had won. When they exited the chamber, the room was silent. Professor Zelith approached them, her 6. 3 days after the physical tests, the human cadets sat in a large classroom filled with alien students. Today was their first academic challenge, and the tension in the room was thick. Professor Zelith, a tall alien with 6 eyes and skin like polished silver, stood at the front of the room. "Today we begin tactical simulations," she said. "Each team will face a combat scenario designed for 5th-year cadets." Olivia glanced at Jack with concern. "5th year? We're supposed to be in 1st-year classes." Jack nodded slightly. "They're trying to make us fail," the professor continued. "Teams will be based on species. The human team will go last." For the next 2 hours, they watched as other teams entered the simulation chamber. Most groups failed quickly against the advanced scenario. Even the Taurians, a warrior species known for their strength, only lasted 12 minutes. Finally, it was the humans' turn. They gathered at the entrance to the simulation room. "Listen up," Jack said quietly. "They expect us to fail, but we have something they don't." "What's that?" asked Frank. "Human creativity," Olivia answered with a small smile. "Let's show them how Earth fights." They entered the simulation chamber. The walls transformed into a battlefield, a city under attack by enemy forces. The scenario was simple but nearly impossible. defend a civilian evacuation point against overwhelming enemy numbers. Analysis shows enemy forces outnumber us 20-1, Lisa said, checking the tactical display. Standard approach would be to form a defensive line here, but we'd be overrun in minutes. Olivia studied the map carefully. We're not going to win by following standard tactics. She pointed to several spots on the map. Ryan and Frank, create distractions here and here. Lisa, find high ground for sniper position. Jack and I will set traps along these routes. This isn't in any of the standard defense protocols, Ryan noted. Exactly, Olivia said. They won't expect it. For the next 30 minutes, the human team executed Olivia's plan. Instead of forming a defensive line as the simulation expected, they created chaos. They set traps, used decoys, and constantly moved positions. The enemy AI, programmed to fight against conventional tactics, became confused. In the observation room, Professor Zelith watched with growing interest. Beside her, Commander Velnox could not hide his surprise. What are they doing? He asked. Their approach is completely unorthodox, yet effective, Zelith replied. The simulation was not programmed for these tactics. Back in the simulation, the humans had managed to hold the evacuation point for 45 minutes, longer than any other team. We're almost out of ammunition, Frank reported. Olivia nodded. Time for the final phase. She accessed the simulation controls and input a command that the computer initially rejected as impossible. It required overriding the safety protocols and combining two separate operations. What are you doing? The simulation voice asked. Something you didn't think of, Olivia replied, completing a manual override. In the simulation, their defensive position suddenly changed. By combining evacuation protocols with defensive systems in a way not in the programming, Olivia had created a new solution. The simulation ended with a soft chime. Scenario complete. Evacuation successful. The human cadets looked at each other in disbelief. They had won. When they exited the chamber, the room was silent. Professor Zelith approached them, her 6 eyes blinking rapidly. Cadet Martinez, she said, explain your solution. Olivia stood straight. The scenario assumed we would follow coalition tactical doctrine. Instead, we used Earth guerrilla warfare combined with evacuation protocols to create a strategy the enemy AI wasn't programmed to counter. This approach is not in any training manual, Velnox noted. No, sir, Jack replied. On Earth, we learn to adapt when outnumbered. Later that evening, unknown to the human cadets, Professor Zelith sent a message to the Academy leadership. Recommend immediate study of Earth military history. Human tactical thinking may be more valuable than initially assessed. Eyes blinking rapidly. Cadet Martinez, she said, explain your solution. Olivia stood straight. The scenario assumed we would follow coalition tactical doctrine. Instead, we used Earth guerrilla warfare combined with evacuation protocols to create a strategy the enemy AI wasn't programmed to counter. This approach is not in any training manual, Velnox noted. No, sir, Jack replied. On Earth, we learned to adapt when outnumbered. Later that evening, unknown to the human cadets, Professor Zelith sent a message to the Academy leadership. Recommend immediate study of Earth military history. Human tactical thinking may be more valuable than initially assessed. 1 month into their training, the humans were called to a special meeting with Grand Marshal Drex. They stood nervously in his office, wondering if their secret training sessions had been discovered. Cadets, Drex said, his 4 legs shifting as he studied them. Your progress has been noted. It is time for the Void trial. The humans exchanged confused glances. They had never heard of this test. What's the Void trial, sir? Jack asked. A test of mental discipline, Drex explained. Cadets enter isolation chambers for 72 hours. No light. No sound. Complete sensory deprivation. Olivia frowned. What's the purpose of this test? To assess psychological resilience, Commander Velnox said from behind Drex. It reveals one's true mental strength. Jack noticed the slight tilt to Velnox's head, a gesture he had learned meant satisfaction among his species. No first-year cadet has ever completed it, Velnox added. Most senior officers consider it the ultimate challenge. Now Jack understood. This was their attempt to break the humans. When do we start? He asked calmly. Tomorrow at dawn, Drex replied. You have until then to prepare. Back in their quarters, the humans discussed the upcoming trial. They're trying to make us quit, Lisa said. Isolation can cause hallucinations, anxiety, even temporary insanity. Humans have endured worse, Frank replied. Prisoners of war, solitary confinement. But 72 hours of complete sensory deprivation? Ryan looked worried. That's extreme. Jack paced the room, thinking. We need a plan, a way to maintain our sanity. What about Morse code? Olivia suggested suddenly. If the chambers are close to each other, we could tap messages through the walls. They spent the rest of the day practicing Morse code and mental exercises. When dawn came, they were as ready as they could be. The isolation chambers were small pods, barely large enough for a human to sit in. As the doors closed, all light and sound disappeared. Complete darkness. Complete silence. The first few hours were manageable. Each human focused on mental exercises, counting, recalling songs and stories. But as time stretched on, the void became increasingly difficult to bear. Ryan was the first to tap on his chamber wall. A simple message, still here. One by one, the others responded with their own taps. Soon they established a rhythm, checking in every hour, sharing simple messages, even telling jokes through the painfully slow code. In the monitoring room, Dr. Evelyn, the academy psychologist, watched the readings from the chambers with growing interest. They are communicating, she told Velnox, pointing to the vibration sensors, through the chamber walls. Impossible, Velnox said. The chambers are soundproofed. Not for physical vibrations, Dr. Evelyn replied. They are using some form of code. See the patterns? As the hours passed, the alien officers became increasingly fascinated. No species had ever attempted communication during the Void trial. Most struggled simply to remain conscious and sane. By the second day, the humans had developed a complex system. They played word games, shared stories from Earth, and even created a rotating schedule so someone was always on duty to respond to the others. Remarkable, Dr. Evelyn murmured as she monitored their vital signs. Their stress levels are elevated but stable. They are supporting each other. On the third day, Grand Marshal Drex himself came to observe. He watched the monitor screens silently for an hour. They should be breaking by now, Velnox said. The isolation should be unbearable. They have found a way to avoid true isolation, Drex replied. A solution no one considered. News of the humans' success in the Void trial spread quickly through the academy. Cadets from other species began to look at them with something new in their eyes, respect. Even some instructors nodded acknowledgement when they passed in the hallways. 2 weeks later, Grand Marshal Drex announced the annual War Games. This massive training exercise pitted teams against each other in a multi-day simulation of real combat conditions. The War Games are the most important event of the training year, Qatar explained to the humans as they ate lunch together. Performance here determines future assignments. How does it work? Asked Frank. Alara, the empathic variant, joined their conversation. 2 teams. One attacks, one defends. The defensive team protects a base with limited resources while the offensive team tries to capture it. Let me guess, Jack said. We're on the defensive team with bad odds. Qatar nodded. The humans and their training partners have been assigned as defenders. The attacking force will be led by senior cadets and instructors. Olivia smiled. Perfect. Defense is where humans excel. Later that day, they received their official assignment. The human team would defend a simulated outpost with just 20 cadets against 60 attackers. The simulation would last 3 days, and according to Academy records, no defensive team had ever lasted more than 8 hours. The human cadets gathered their allies for planning. Besides Qatar, Alara, and Zox, they had recruited 17 other cadets from various species. Each brought unique abilities. Some could see in darkness, others had enhanced strength or speed, and a few possessed senses humans lacked entirely. Lisa studied the terrain map. They expect us to fortify the central building and make our stand there. That's what every defensive team does. And that's why they always lose, Jack added. We need to think differently. Olivia pointed to various locations on the map. Instead of one central defense, we create multiple small teams, mobile, adaptive, able to strike and vanish. Guerrilla warfare, Ryan said, nodding. Just like we practiced. For the next 2 hours, they developed their strategy. When the war games began the following day, the attacking team found an apparently abandoned base. They entered cautiously, searching for defenders. Where are they? Commander Velnox asked from the command center as he watched the simulation. Scans show they're still active in the game. His question was answered when small groups of defenders emerged from hidden positions, struck quickly, and disappeared. Again, they never engaged directly, instead using traps, diversions, and surprise to eliminate attackers. By the end of the first day, the attacking team had lost 15 members and gained no ground. Their commanders were frustrated and confused. This is not how cadets are trained to fight, one senior instructor complained. On the second day, Lisa implemented her special project. She had created dozens of decoys and false intelligence reports that appeared in the attackers' systems. Some showed defenders where none existed. Others hid the real defenders' positions. The attacking force became increasingly cautious, jumping at shadows and wasting time pursuing phantoms. Jack led small strike teams that captured key locations, briefly just long enough to gain points, then vanished before counterattacks could arrive. In the command center, the senior officers watched with growing disbelief. How is this possible, one asked. They have inferior numbers and equipment. Yet they control the battlefield, Drex observed. Remarkable. By the third day, 7 senior alien officers on the attacking team had formally surrendered rather than continue. Their official reason, recorded in the Academy log, stated, "Continued engagement against current defensive tactics proved maddening and unpredictable." When the simulation ended, the final score showed the defensive team had not only survived, but achieved victory. It was unprecedented in Academy history. As they left the simulation arena, tired but triumphant, Jack noticed Velnox waiting for them. The commander's forearms were perfectly still, a sign of deep thought among his species. "Cadet Daniels," he said formally. The defensive strategy employed was not found in any Academy tactical manual. Jack stood straight. "No, sir. It's called asymmetric warfare. Humans have used it for centuries." "It seems," Velnox said slowly, "that we have much to learn from Earth." When the 72 hours were complete, the chamber doors opened. The humans emerged, tired and disoriented from the darkness, but conscious and coherent. They blinked, in the sudden light, supporting each other as they stepped out. Dr. Evelyn approached them, her tentacles waving in what they had learned was an expression of amazement. "How?" she asked simply. "We're social creatures," Jack explained, his voice hoarse from disuse. "So we found a way to stay connected." Later that day, Dr. Evelyn filed an official request to study human psychological resilience. Her report contained one notable conclusion. Humans do not experience isolation as other species do. When faced with the void, they create connection. After the war games, the 5 human cadets found themselves treated differently. Alien cadets who had once avoided them now sought them out for training advice. Instructors who had dismissed humans as primitive now paid close attention to their methods. Even Grand Marshal Drex had personally congratulated them on their victory. "We've made progress," Jack told his teammates as they relaxed in their common room. "But we still have a long way to go to prove what humans can really offer the Coalition." Little did they know that opportunity would come sooner than expected. 3 days later, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in every corridor, and a computerized voice repeated, "Emergency lockdown initiated. All cadets return to quarters immediately." The human cadets rushed into the hallway where panicked aliens ran in all directions. "What's happening?" Olivia asked Qatar as he hurried past. "Containment breach in the weapons lab," he replied, his scales pale with fear. "Experimental combat drones are loose. They're programmed to eliminate all life forms." As other cadets rushed to safety, Jack gathered his team. "Where are these drones now?" Ryan checked a nearby information panel. "Level 3, Section D, moving toward the junior cadets' quarters." Jack's expression hardened. "There are kids down there?" "The emergency protocols say to evacuate and wait for security forces," Lisa reminded him. "By then it could be too late," Jack replied. "We're going." The human cadets ran against the flow of evacuating aliens. They passed several instructors who shouted for them to turn back, but they kept going. Olivia quickly formed a plan. "We need weapons. The training room is on the way." They detoured to the combat training area and grabbed whatever they could find: shock batons, practice shields, and a few training rifles that fired stun pulses. "These won't stop combat drones," Frank warned. "Then we'll have to be creative," Jack replied. When they reached level 3, they found chaos. 3 sleek, hovering drones moved through the corridors, firing energy pulses at anything that moved. Several alien cadets lay injured on the floor, and a group of younger cadets were trapped in a classroom. The door jammed shut. Jack assessed the situation quickly. "Lisa, Frank, get those injured cadets to safety. Ryan, help me distract the drones. Olivia, see if you can reach the trapped kids." They moved into action. Jack and Ryan fired stun pulses at the drones, drawing their attention away from the younger cadets. The pulses did little damage but were enough to attract the drones. "Targeting systems, over here, you flying garbage cans," Ryan shouted, diving behind a barrier as energy blasts hit where he had stood. Meanwhile, Olivia worked on the jammed door, using her training baton to pry it open. Inside, 7 young alien cadets huddled in fear. "Stay calm," she told them. "We're going to get you out." As she worked, she didn't notice a drone approaching from behind. It raised its weapon, targeting her exposed back. From down the corridor, Commander Velnox watched in horror. He had come to assess the situation and found the humans already engaged. He saw the drone targeting Olivia and knew she wouldn't survive. The blast. What happened next would be discussed for years at the Academy. Velnox, an officer known for strict adherence to protocol, rushed forward and placed himself between Olivia and the drone. The energy blast hit him squarely in the chest, sending him crashing to the floor. "Commander!" Olivia cried, turning to see him fall. The distraction gave Jack and Qatar, who had arrived with several other alien cadets trained by the humans, the 2. Weeks after the drone incident, the human cadets stood in their dress uniforms outside the Academy's Grand Hall. Commander Velnox had recovered from his injuries and returned to duty, though he now walked with a slight limp. "Any idea why they called us here?" Ryan asked nervously. Jack shook his head. "Could be anything after what happened." The doors opened, and Grand Marshal Drex himself greeted them. "Enter, cadets. The council awaits." Inside the hall, hundreds of alien officers and cadets had gathered. The 5 humans walked down the center aisle, feeling every eye on them. At the front sat the EU, Galactic Coalition Military Council, 12 senior officers representing the major species of the Alliance. "Cadets of Earth," Drex announced formally. "You have been summoned for evaluation." The humans stood at attention, expecting the worst. Had they broken too many rules? Gone too far in their training methods? An elderly alien with translucent skin and glowing eyes spoke first. "When Earth was invited to send representatives to our academy, expectations were," he paused, "minimal." The council members nodded in agreement. "Your species is young," continued another council member. "Barely a century of spaceflight, no telepathic abilities, average physical capabilities. By all metrics, humans should have struggled to complete even basic training." Jack maintained his stance but felt his heart sink. After everything they had accomplished, they were still being judged for being human. The first council member raised a hand. "And yet, You have proven every assessment catastrophically incorrect." A murmur ran through the assembled crowd. "In the history of this academy," Drek said, stepping forward, "no first-year cadets have ever completed the Void Trial. No defending team has ever won the War Games, and certainly no cadets have ever faced combat drones with improvised weapons and succeeded." Velnox approached the humans, his forearms moving in formal gestures. "The Academy exists to train the best warriors and strategists in the galaxy, but we cannot teach what we do not understand. Humans have shown us new methods, new approaches we had not considered." The council members conferred briefly, then the elderly alien spoke again. "We have reached a decision. The human cadets are offered accelerated graduation, effective immediately." Olivia gasped. Frank and Ryan exchanged shocked glances. Lisa's eyes widened in surprise. "Additionally," Drex continued, "the Galactic Coalition Military Council announces a complete restructuring of training protocols to incorporate human tactical approaches." A tall alien in an elaborate uniform approached with a datapad. "The official record now reflects that the initial assessment of human capabilities was, and I quote, catastrophically incorrect. This admission has been transmitted to Earth's governments." Jack could hardly believe what he was hearing. In just a few months, they had changed the Academy's centuries-old traditions. Velnox stepped forward. "Cadet Daniels and Cadet Martinez will remain at the Academy as instructors. You will teach a new required course, adaptive response and unconventional strategy." "And the rest of us?" Lisa asked. "Will serve as humanity's first officers on coalition vessels," Drex replied. "Your perspectives are needed throughout our fleet." What happened next stunned the humans completely. One by one, their former alien instructors approached and performed a strange gesture, bowing their heads while touching their right hands to their foreheads. Qatar leaned close to Jack. "The sacred bow of respect," he whispered. "It is reserved for master strategists. No first-year cadet has ever received this honor." As the ceremony concluded, the alien cadets they had trained surrounded them, each eager to speak with the humans who had changed the Academy forever. Olivia found herself standing next to Velnox. "Commander, I never properly thanked you for saving my life." Velnox tilted his head thoughtfully. "It was you who saved me, Cadet Martinez. You and your fellow humans showed me that there is always another way, always another strategy I had not considered." He paused. "That is a gift beyond measure." Outside the hall, Jack looked up at the stars visible through the station's massive viewing dome. Somewhere out there was Earth, still finding its place in the galaxy. "We did it," he said quietly. "We showed them what humans can do." "No," Olivia replied with a smile. "We showed them what we can all do together." The opportunity they needed. Using techniques practiced in their secret sessions, they coordinated a multi-species attack on the drones. Each species used their unique abilities: Qatar's strength, Alara's empathic sense to predict movements, and Zox's forearmed accuracy with thrown objects. Within minutes, all three drones lay disabled on the floor. As medical teams arrived, Olivia knelt beside Velnox, who was badly injured but conscious. "Why?" she asked him. "Why did you do that?" The commander's eyes blinked slowly. "Because you would have done the same," he replied. "I have been studying humans." As they carried him away for treatment, Jack looked around at the mixed group of humans and aliens who had fought together. Something important had just changed at the Academy.